Okay, I thought I'd make a video about why evolution is a thing. This isn't my opinion. This isn't a contrived argument of some kind. This is something that is factual. You can go online and find out all by yourself. So, in 2003, a doctor by the name of Dr. Hansel Stedman in New England, in the University of Pennsylvania, was working on doing some research on muscular dystrophy. His brother suffers from muscular dystrophy, and so that's an added motivation for him to find a cause and a cure. So he was looking at the DNA strands. He found in one little segment of DNA two broken base pairs in a gene called the MYH16 gene, and it was based on like how the number sequence of the DNA looked. He realized that it was probably from experience that it was for a muscle, and this broken thing typically indicates muscular dystrophy. And he was looking at his brother's DNA at this lab at the University of Pennsylvania. And so he got all excited. He thought he found something. And so just to make sure, he took his own DNA and compared his brother's to his to make sure that he didn't have this defect in the DNA, that it was a cause of muscular dystrophy. And to his surprise, he had the same defect that his brother had. Okay, so, a lot of times when people work in a lab, and they usually take the samples of the other volunteers in the lab and the other doctors in the lab. So he went on and got more samples, and he checked all their DNA, and they're all missing those two base pairs. They all had that same defect. So he didn't know what to do. So he thought, well, there's a zoo. I'll go down to the zoo, and there's chimpanzees at the zoo. He didn't have anything else anywhere to go and investigate this, so he went to the zoo and he asked the zookeepers where the chimpanzees were, if he could get blood samples or DNA samples of some kind, probably blood samples or tissue samples, most likely blood samples. Anyway, so he got this blood samples, studied the DNA, and the chimpanzees did not have those missing base pairs in the MYH16 gene. So, what do the chimpanzees have that we don't have? Now, the science program I was watching this, they said at this point that you can actually attach a dye to a sequence of DNA and watch, like a blue dye, and you can watch the embryo develop and watch those DNA strands go from an instruction set to actually molding a part of the body, and they kind of move around and you can see where it goes. So they wanted to see, what is this muscle that the chimpanzees have that we don't have, that we have, that is actually a defect in us. And so they watched the dye move around, and it went, up to the head, and it turned out that it is a muscle that goes from your jaw, it goes from the chimpanzee's jaw, behind the cheekbone, and it attaches up on the top of the bony ridge on top of the skull. We don't have that muscle. We kind of have a kind of bump on the top of our head, like a little ridge, where it seems like there's supposed to be something to be attached there that's no longer there. And the chimps and apes have this massive muscle that gives them a bite power that's much greater than human beings. But the fact that we don't have that gigantic muscle, it frees up the space for our brains to grow, with that muscle, we would have something holding down our skull so that we wouldn't be able to develop large brains. Because of this defect in the DNA that we can see, we evolved as a species large brains. So this is something that, when I talk about the similarities of the DNA, our DNA between us and other apes, creationists will come back at me and say, well, it's an indication of a common designer. But that doesn't fit with the fact that we actually have proof that a defect, a form of muscular dystrophy that's inherited, has caused us to have big brains. That's the end of the story. But there's more. This actually makes you think about other things too, like the fact that we're born with muscular dystrophy, that mutation is a real thing, and it's still going on today. And muscular dystrophy, since a child, I've seen Jerry Lewis have this muscular dystrophy telethon. So it kind of is an indication that, you know, the universe is crueler than we think it is, and that we are here through processes of mutations and natural selection as a real thing. And our inability to accept that is why we look at muscular dystrophy as a disease that, in fact, we are born with, that occurs through mutation. So that's it. That is why evolution is a thing.